Hi, welcome back to the channel. So today we're working on a utility vehicle right over here. So it's a trail wagon. It's powered by an 11 horsepower Honda motor. There's a problem with the transmission. So I'm going to explain a little bit more what the problem is and how we're going to fix it. So in order to get really good access so I can show you what the problem is, I'm going to lift up the tailgate and pull off the rear wheel, and then we'll take a deeper dive into the mechanical side. So that's what I'll do next. Okay, so I have the rear wheel off, and off camera I removed the plastic covers or shields that basically cover the belt. Right over there are the plastic panels that I'm talking about. So they basically cover this side of the engine. It covers the secondary clutch, and there's actually a panel that goes underneath, and really what that does is that it tries to get, or that's to keep dirt and moisture and debris from coming into contact with the belt right here. The problem with this machine was that there was difficulty in shifting the utility vehicle into forward and reverse. And what I mean by that is, once I took the side shields off, I started the motor up and I let the motor idle, and what I observed was that the drive belt was turning. So the drive belt is being turned by the motor. It's then turning this secondary clutch right here, which is also connected to the transmission. So what you would see is that when you move the gear selector switch from neutral, so I'll show you what I mean by that. So right up here is the gear selector switch. You've got reverse, neutral, and forward. So when you would go from neutral to forward, or from neutral to reverse, there'd be a lot of difficulty. There was some pressure in here that would prevent you from going from neutral to reverse or neutral to forward. Once you're either into reverse or forward, the vehicle would automatically want to jump forward. So you really have to have your foot on the brake in order to prevent the vehicle from lunging forward or lunging backwards. And then if you wanted to go from forward to reverse, it was practically impossible. So this is what was happening here. So here's the secondary clutch, and the secondary clutch turns the input shaft to the transmission, and then right here you have the gear selector lever. So if you pull the lever in this direction, it would engage into either forward or reverse, and if you go in the opposite direction this way, you'd be going into the opposite gear, either forward or reverse. Okay, and then as you would press on the accelerator, the clutches would engage, and then the secondary pulley or secondary clutch would start to turn, and then your drive wheels would turn. Okay, so this is the transmission, and here's the gear selector lever, which would put the transmission in either forward, neutral, or reverse. Just to recap, there's mosquitoes in here. Just to recap, the problem lied with the fact that the clutch would not fully disengage. And what that means is that the belt would be continually turning this secondary clutch, thus turning the input shaft on the transmission. So imagine you trying to shift the transmission when the transmission's turning. So that was the problem. So I then turned my attention towards the clutch. Why is the clutch not deactivating or disengaging? And here's the parts diagram right here. So here's the engine, here's the clutch. The clutch turns this belt, and the belt turns the secondary pulley right here. So I removed a portion of the clutch. So here's the other half of the clutch. And what you would expect is the clutch would disengage sufficiently or enough that the belt would just freewheel, or it would just spin. Sorry, the engine crankshaft would continually turn because the motor's turning, but the belt would just freewheel or just stay stationary. It would not contact the crankshaft or would not contact the clutch because the clutch is disengaged, and therefore the belt wouldn't turn, and then the secondary clutch wouldn't turn, and therefore you'd be able to easily change the gear from forward to neutral or to reverse. So as you can see, I've already removed the clutch, and we'll now go to the workbench, and I'll show you the part that failed on the clutch and that we're going to replace today. Okay, so here we are back at the workbench, and I'm going to just show you some of the parts that are part of the clutch assembly for the utility vehicle. So let's look down here. So here's half of the clutch disc that we were talking about a little bit earlier on the other side. Here's a heavy duty spring. I have a retainer spring right here, spring clip, and then I have this little plastic part right here. And this in fact is the part that failed on the UTV. So the way I understood this is that it's called a spring cap, and it's part number 05403002. So this plastic piece, according to the research I did on the internet, is called a spring cap. And to my understanding is that this part fits inside the clutch, like so, and it's held in place with this retainer spring inside here like this. This goes inside the clutch like this, like so. And then on the back side, the spring locates inside like this. So when everything is in, more or less it kind of fits in there like that. And this spring actually pulls this half of the clutch away or apart. So I think that this is essentially the problem, is that because this plastic part failed, I don't know how it failed. I don't know if it melted or it just broke. What happened is that the moment that failed, this spring was no longer making this half of the clutch disengage, and therefore the belt continually turned when it should not turn all the time. So this is one problem that I found, and I ran into a second problem, and that's trying to source a part like this, and I wasn't able to do so. I found sites that had them, but they were either back order or they're no longer available. And then I looked at the other option, which wasn't the greatest option, and that's a complete replacement clutch, and that wasn't possible either. So as a last resort, I contacted a buddy of mine who owns a welding and machine shop, and I said, can you make me one? So, and that's what he did. So he made me a replacement piece out of aluminum, and he basically took the measurements or the dimensions off the original and he transferred them onto this new one right here. And as you can see, this one fits inside the clutch. And as you can see, the spring locates inside just like the original. So because it's aluminum, it shouldn't fail due to heat. Who knows, it might last longer. And ultimately, hopefully this fixes the problem. So without any further ado, let's go and get this thing installed. Okay, so we're going to be working right here. So I'll remove this washer, this part, and then there's also a spacer right here. So this part goes on. This is essentially the other half of the clutch right here. Now what we're going to do is assemble the clutch components so that we can attach this to the rest of the machine. So from what I gathered on the internet, the sequence of the parts are as follows. So you start with the disc or the clutch, install this piece in first, down inside, install this spacer inside. That spacer is just going to locate itself in there like that. Now I'll set the spring in. Okay, and then the bushing or the spring cap, that goes on next. And then of course you've got the retainer spring, and that retainer fits inside that groove. But do you see the problem here? How do you get the bushing compressed? How are we going to compress the spring and the bushing down inside and then set the spring clip? So I have a possible solution to this. I'm going to use my 1 1/8 impact socket. I'm going to place it here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compress the whole thing with the car lift. So let me show you what I have in mind over here. Okay, now I'll set the retainer spring inside. I want the two ends of the spring not to end up in this little spot right here. I want it to be right there. Okay, just push that in. Okay, we hear the click. Okay, I'll just do a visual just to make sure that I'm in. I'm in. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll raise the lift up. Okay, I'll show you over here at the bench. That was a pretty good install. I don't have a hydraulic press, but there was enough weight on the car lift like the overall assembly of the car lift was heavy enough to compress that spring in place. So as you can see, the bushing is in, the retainer spring clip is in all the way around in the groove. There's the two halves of the spring right here. So they don't end up in this crescent shape. They end up right here, which is where I want it to be. Inside you've got that spacer. Everything is in the right spot. Okay. That ring spacer is where I want it. Okay, so let's go put this on the other half of the clutch. So first thing, make sure this spacer right here is on, and it goes on the furthest step on the shaft, okay? So this furthest step, it goes right there. And then make sure that shim or that spacer inside is located as close as possible here, centered. And then now insert your clutch. Insert your clutch. There you go. So this is what you should see at this end right here. Okay? And then right here, folks, this is what I really like to see. There is a nice, actually let's have a look from the top. This is a really good alignment, folks, because do you see now that there is a little bit of space, free space between the belt and the clutch. So when the clutch is not activated because the motor isn't turning or spinning, you can now see that the belt will actually just stay stationary in here when the motor's running. So therefore, with the belt not turning, there'd be no problem with getting the transmission to engage and disengage. Okay, so we're going to continue on. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set in the weights. So the weights look like this. There's 3 of them, and they fit inside like so. So one there, one there like that, and then another over here. Okay, and then there's your top drum. The top drum goes over top like so, and then you're going to install this washer. This washer has little serrated edges on it on both sides. However, it's cone shaped, so you're going to want to line up the cone shape to match the cone shape of the clutch drum. So that's going to go on like that. And then you're going to finish it off with this retainer nut. I'm going to let go of this. Oh, I can't let go of that because it's going to come apart. Just going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads here. Okay, and then thread this nut back on. Like so. And then I'll grab my impact tool or my impact gun and I'll tighten this down. Now I don't have the torque spec for this nut, but I'm going to use common sense and just put it on tight. There you go, that's it. There you have it, folks. The clutch is reinstalled. The nut is torqued on with the impact tool. Now what we'll do is let's start up the motor and we'll do a test to see if the clutch properly works. So I'm going to hop into the operator area and I'm going to start it up, and then we're going to run the engine. So let me start it up over here. Put the key on. Mosquito, pull the choke. Okay, make sure the transmission is in neutral and give it a shot here. Okay, more choke. More choke. This is a really good sign. So the motor's turning, obviously it's running, and as you can see, the drive belt isn't turning. The drive belt's not turning, therefore there won't be any problems to shift the transmission into gear. So I have the drive wheels, I have the axle of the UTV up on jack stands. So I can actually engage the transmission and rev up the motor, and the wheels are just going to freewheel. So then you can have a look at the proper engagement. I'm going to put it in forward. Try reverse. I'll let out the brake. Okay, there you have it. So the preliminary test on this shows that the primary clutch is working properly now. The secondary clutch is working as it should, and that the belt is both engaging and disengaging when appropriate or as needed. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to close it up. We're going to reinstall a few of the parts, such as the bolt that holds the tailgate down. We'll reinstall the belt guards. We'll reinstall the rear tire, and then we'll go for a test and we'll see if the machine works perfectly. So stay tuned and we'll start putting those parts back on. installed is this bolt. It acts as the catch for the tailgate. That goes right here on the frame. And let's see, what do we need? That's it. So when the tailgate comes down, it should grab this latch. There you go. Actually, our alignment was pretty good. Okay, so that's in place. My guard's back in place. I guess what we'll do is we'll reinstall the rear wheel, and then we'll go give it a test drive and see if everything works as it should. For the jack stands, right open. There you go. So that's going to be the end of this video. As you can see, we just did a run test, and it looks like the clutch issue is now resolved. The transmission shifts perfectly from reverse to neutral to forward. So our suspicion that there was an issue with the clutch was correct. We replaced that bushing with a nice reliable aluminum one. So we'll get all kinds of additional life and use out of this machine. So that's going to be it for now. Stay tuned for the next one, and thank you for tuning in.